Sometimes on the first day at a new job, you know you found your forever home. Other times you're not so sure. And then there's that third type of job. That's the one that rips out your soul and leaves you like an empty locust shell hanging on a tree. This is a story about one of those jobs. It was 22 October 1974, 0830 hours. I'm sitting at the Air Force Induction Center at Kansas City, Missouri with 50 hygienically challenged dudes. My going away party had ended just a couple of hours earlier, and I'm still seeing things that I'm pretty sure aren't really there. It was a good party. Sitting there in my stupor, my mind wandered back over the course of events that had brought me to this place. Now, you may not believe this, but back in the day, I had the schmooze going on. I could schmooze my way into or out of just about anything. Mom always said I could charm the bark off of a tree. And I know she worried that I was going to schmooze my way into a pregnant girlfriend. And you ladies know how mothers know their sons. That is exactly what happened. So now I'm wanting to finish college, but I've got a child on the way, and finding the time and the money for school seemed pretty near impossible. But then I had a friend who said, need to join the military. He said the GI Bill benefits were excellent. And since the war was winding down, I probably would not have to go to Vietnam. And then when I got out, there would be money for school. Well, this seemed like a perfect plan. So I went down to visit with the Air Force recruiter. I listened to his pitch, and then I told him I'm not going to sign any papers until I've gone next door to see what the Marine Corps has to offer. He got a horrified look on his face and he cried out, "For God's sakes, don't do it, man. I have heard that those guys are full-bore crazy." I didn't realize it was an old recruiter's trick where you scare the hell out of the recruit and get him to sign the papers. Well, he did, and I did. I was snapped back to reality at the induction center when a door flew open, and in stormed 4 men wearing uniforms and Smokey Bear hats. These guys were screaming like they had fire ants in their skivvies, and the room instantly transformed from boredom into bedlam. Let me tell you about these guys in the Smokey Bear hats. First, the hats changed their voices, and they all sound like this. "Do you understand me, Slick?" Second, and probably more importantly, is in order to get those hats, they have to trade in their sense of humor. In about 5 minutes, I was going to wish I had that particular piece of information. Now, Smokey Bear number 1 was in charge, and he was an angry-looking man. He finished the roll call, and then he barked at us to strip down to our underwear and then get back into line for a physical exam. Well, now I had a conundrum. Because I had gone to the induction center commando. That's right, I wasn't wearing any underwear. Don't judge me. Maybe a little historical perspective on the fashion trends of the 70s is in order here. If you weren't lucky enough to be there, the 70s was a great time to be young. Millions of people demonstrating for all sorts of causes, and everywhere you turned, somebody wanted to stick it to the man. Well, as young people, we stuck it to the man the only way we knew how, by not wearing undergarments. I know, right? But it made sense at the time. And going commando had punched my ticket into the Brotherhood of Hippie Freaks. And one of the benefits of being a freak was you got to hang around with all those hippie chicks that weren't wearing bras. Did I mention it was a great time to be Anyhow, I don't have any underwear on, and I don't want to be the only guy standing there in the room butt naked. So I decide I'll leave my blue jeans on and slip back into line. I figured they'll never notice. You can't get anything past these guys in the Smokey Bear hats. And number one charged me like a rabid rhino. This man was screaming at me, his hat hitting me on the bridge of my nose with every syllable. He demanded to know why I wasn't stripped down to my underwear. This is where I made my mistake. I'm thinking we're just two guys got off on the wrong foot. And what this moment needed was just a touch of levity. So in my very best Tommy Chong voice, I said, I'm not wearing any underwear, man. I had never seen a man's head explode before. Number one unleashed a torrent of expletives on me that would make a longshoreman blush. He followed that with an all-out assault on my gene pool. You know, to this day, I still don't understand what he had against my mother. Now, this whole time he's screaming at me, he's hitting me on the nose with that hat. And just as I'm about to pass out from a concussion, it happened. Next to me in line was another hippie freak. This guy had hair down to his waist. And for whatever reason, he starts laughing uncontrollably. Now, you know these Smokey Bears had wanted a piece of that freak from the moment they saw his hairdo. And they were on him like ducks on a June bug. In less than a minute, hippie freak is lying on the floor in the fetal position, sobbing. I have been standing over here at attention. At this point, it was the only thing they had taught us. But I was watching the show out of the corner of my eye. I see the freak go down. And then I see number one turn towards me. I remember thinking to myself, in the words of the songwriter Don McLean, and this will be the day that I die. Well, number one gets right up in my face, his hat resting on the bridge of my nose. The only sounds in the room are hippie freak sobs. After what seemed like an eternity, number one growled at me, "Will you just leave those blue jeans on until I tell you otherwise? Do you understand me, slick?" Now, in my defense, at the recruiter's office, I'd had to sign at least 24 papers, each one of which that recruiter had to, by law, read out loud to me. In all of that, there was not one single mention about underwear. And if something's going to be that important, you have got to put it in writing. Well, I wish I could tell you that the Air Force and I had a taster's choice moment and fell in love with each other. That didn't happen. Instead, it was more like Bill Murray in the movie Groundhog Day. And for the next 3 years, the Air Force and I replayed that first day over and over and over again. Well, only it wasn't about underwear. They were nice enough to give me some underwear. But we always seemed to find something to bicker about. At my discharge, there were no crocodile tears shed by anyone. Neither the Air Force nor I could see that it was a bad thing that I was leaving. My military career was doomed for the want of a pair of underwear. As the plane taking me home taxied down the runway, I searched fervently for a bright spot I could take away from this debacle. Anything to make me feel better about the last 3 years. See, I was feeling like that empty locust shell on a tree. I felt like I had failed. But what I didn't realize at the time is I had just learned a valuable lesson about square pegs and round holes. You see, all my life I had been a square peg, and before the Air Force, I intuitively knew where I fit. I didn't recognize that the Air Force was a round hole, and they took me way out of my comfort zone. But they taught me an important lesson, and that is you don't belong every place that you land. Anyhow, as I'm sitting on the airplane back in 1977, I couldn't help thinking that I had made the most disastrous decision I could have possibly made with my young life. And then it hit me like a bolt out of the blue. I could have made a worse decision. I could have showed up not wearing any underwear at the Marine Corps Induction Center. And I've heard those guys are full bore crazy. Thank you.